DeSantis, go away!
You can't blame the youth. You can't fool the youth. Bob Marley was and is always right. He's done great work. I didn't mean to have a Frederick Douglass moment there. But anyway, the point is, those are students in the state of Florida speaking out and walking out against Ron DeSantis's ongoing war on histories that don't involve white people and, again, the LGBTQ community. These are students at Florida public universities, including Florida State University, the University of Florida, Florida International University, among others, who staged this coordinated walkout on Thursday in protest of Ron DeSantis' ongoing attacks on education, including policies targeting people of color and LGBTQ people. If you are just waking up to this news, welcome. Everything sucks. But specifically, Florida schools districts are banning books en masse, while others are closing their libraries in order to avoid prosecution under a new law that requires a specialist to review every book in school. The new College of Florida president was forced out by the DeSantis stacked board of trustees and replaced with another DeSantis ally. And if you all didn't know, this is actually there was questions as to whether like the AP board in the state were going to fold under these new restrictions, and indeed they did, banning books from people like Kimberly Crenshaw and James Baldwin and other like seminal, specifically like mostly queer Black authors that dare discuss things like intersectionality, where it's like, no, my gender and my race and my sex all, and my like economic situation and my sexuality, they intermix. And it's like, no. We can only do one thing at a time. But so there you have it. Obviously, if you didn't know, his Don't Say Gay bill, this is DeSantis's, prevents the discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity through third grade. He has lobbied for the Stop Woke Act, which restricts teaching on race in colleges. And he's announced plans to mandate Western civilization courses and to defund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on state college campuses. And if you needed a reminder about what a POS this man is, and here he is defending the idea that this is the righteous and good thing to do for colleges.
And we want to do history, and that's what our standards for Black history are. It's just cut and dried history. You learn all the basics, you learn about the great figures, and I view it as American history. I don't view it as separate history. We have history, a lot of different shapes and sizes. People that have participated to make the country great, people that have stood up when it wasn't easy, and they all deserve to be taught. But abolishing prisons, being taught to high school kids as if that's somehow a fact, no, that's not appropriate.
This is the most like just so much shade on the legacy of the civil rights movement. They did some good things, like great. Kudos to you, there were dogs and water cannons and and many people died and the CIA and the FBI undermined you, but whatever. Like it's just so disrespectful. But Mike, he just wants to see everybody as Americans. Everyone, it's all just American history.
Yeah, it's totally believable. I think he's coming from a really good faith place. No, I mean like the loyalty to the Republican Party hinges on keeping people uninformed and keeping people stupid, quite frankly. And these, like the defunding of these programs is actually going to hurt a lot of students. Getting rid of gender studies. I mean, these are real fields of study that matter. Social sciences matter. They may not be as rigorous as like the science, like the hard sciences, right? But these are things that are really matter. And I spoke to someone who goes to Florida State University that I've known for a while, and they're absolutely terrified, but they're not going to back down. And seeing all of the protests and the walkouts, it did give me a little bit of hopium, just because if there was no resistance to this and they kind of just thought that the situation was hopeless, I would feel a little bit more horrified. But they're not backing down. And that really is important, because what we're seeing here is dystopian and Orwellian, and it is full-blown state censorship. And it cannot stand. But he's trying, I think that one article, I can't remember who the author was, put it best, that Ron DeSantis isn't necessarily like the heir to Trump's throne. He really is carving his own fascist lane, and he's mirroring his politics after Viktor Orban. So it's a sort of like American Orbanism. And if you view it through that lens, it makes a lot of sense in the ways in which he's trying to suppress education, trying to whitewash history. And it's brainwashing. It's trying to keep the population very, very dumb so they don't challenge the system and institutions that oppresses them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're really, really on the money with that this is not just picking up the MAGA mantle. It's like it is picking up the old satanic panic mantle, right? And all of these things, the rollbacks especially, these were hard fought wins, guys. And for people who don't know, like the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, like there were no such thing as ethnic studies or African American studies, or women's studies or queer studies, right? It did not exist. It was all just, why can't it just be American history? Oops, suddenly we're missing all of these voices. And you never understand history from the lens of people who aren't landowning white straight dudes. Like that's it. And so that fight is something like everything right now that we have to refight again and again and sadly again. And I agree with you in terms of the hopium. Here we have Malik Gary, who's an organizer for Dream Defenders, who's part of this walkout saying, Ron DeSantis, we're on our way to take you down and we're full steam ahead for a better day. For people that work in the minority class, for people of the Black and brown community, for people that identify in the LGBTQIA community, for folks that are somebody, no matter what race, color or race or gender or ethnicity, everybody is somebody and deserves respect. Yeah, I mean, and this is to a guy who says this is where woke goes to die, right? Also, Maxwell Alejandro Frost, again, the first Gen Z member of Congress representing Florida, kind of the only incredible victory that came out of Florida in the midterms there. Ron has said Ron DeSantis has been relentless in his attacks on Florida's education system, creating a hostile classroom environment that target Black, brown, Hispanic, and LGBTQ plus students for simply existing. We have no choice but to use our collective power to make sure DeSantis and his lapdogs at the Department of Education and on the Board of Trustees know that they need to keep their hateful politics out of our schools. Also, I'm sorry, Mike, but whenever you tell an 18-year-old, don't do this, don't learn about that, stop doing X, Y, or Z, what's the first thing they're gonna do? Yeah, don't rip a standing bong. They all have and they're going to. You know what I'm saying? Like I was an 18 to 21, like these were my prime militant activist anti-war days. It's galvanizing as hell, man. You tell a kid not to do something, that's exactly what they're gonna do.
Yeah, that is such a good point, because by trying to ban all of these books, you are inadvertently driving up interest in them. Because if you're trying to suppress what somebody is saying, particularly an author who's a woman of color or a queer person, like, doesn't that make it more alluring to you? Like, I know that I certainly, maybe it's like the inner contrarian in me, but like I want to seek that out. I want to read it, but they desperately don't want people to read it because these books are compelling. Like these are texts that I think are really important for understanding the world, understanding institutions and the ways in which that they affect people on the basis of race and gender and sexual orientation. So they don't want people to see it, but I think that's such a great point that this will end up backfiring in the end.
Yep, they don't want you to know about white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, bell hooks, put it all together. That's what we're fighting, still fighting.